Satine Greco's path to her inevitable crowning was paved with kindness, humility, and unwavering dedication to her craft, and most importantly, her motherly presence among the cast. She's a consummate professional who takes her art and drag very seriously, but was never afraid to get down and dirty and act absurd in the way that Drag Race fully expects the queens to be at times. It's clear from how the room spoke to her that they had a great reverence for her, and it was clear that early on she was going to be this season's it girl. One thing is true about Drag Race España, maybe more so than any other franchise, is how they've refined their casting choices to an almost perfectly refined formula. And in my opinion, Satine picked up that mantle of her iconic archetype predecessors like Carmen Farala and Sharon and stepped into the competition with confidence, soaring towards the finale with no ego, continuing to be generous towards her fellow castmates and competitors at every single episode, much like those famous predecessors of hers. In episode 1, she showcased a good old classic drag filled with soul and emotion and most importantly, transformation with that Isabel Pantoja lip sync. She had not only the panel transfixed, but also her fellow castmates. Many a queen on Drag Race have come out on a talent show week, performed a generic lip sync, but not many have fueled their performance with as much energy and charisma that could be felt through the camera and screen as Satine did. She proved in that very first appearance that classic drag has its place on Drag Race because that passionate art is the core of what drag truly is. And Drag Race has somewhat lost the plot on that. It's interesting that her very first lip sync of the season was paired against Daphne Mugler, someone who I think absolutely embodies the new school idea of what drag is. New school drag is a bit too polished. It's pre-packed and near perfect. That's a result of Drag Race culture permeating nightlife and harshly adjusting how performers look at drag, because it's all just a bit too ready for TV to the point that it almost looks inauthentic. Satine's drag is near flawless, but it has that visible, gritty edge to it. That piece that makes it look human and sourced from a deep understanding of what her drag is at its core. She once again raised the bar in episode 2 during the acting challenge, so I think when it came time for the ball, her slight stumble was really more of a situation of circumstance. She had impressed the judges so much that this moment seemed like a catastrophe. I think the judges wanted to also know what she would do landing in the bottom while also receiving the heartpiece. How would she play her cards since the power of the first save was clearly in her hands, and she had been playing this motherly role until that point? Would she be self-preserving and save herself? Would she help someone else? How would she make that decision, and what would be her thought process along the way? That sets up not only the energy for what the rest of the decision making is going to be with that heartpiece, but also shows more of her character. And her decision to save Ferran in that moment reflected a genuine sense of selflessness and displayed how deeply she cared for her castmates. It was a risky choice though, because there was a possibility that she could go home. And even fiercer so, she was at peace with whatever resulted from that lip sync outcome. Satine was not giving up on the competition by any means, but she made it very clear in that moment that she wanted the cast to have opportunities to grow their careers. Because that's what Drag Race does, it grows careers. By this point, she had 20 plus years in the business, and I understood this moment as someone who is a seasoned professional who didn't need Drag Race in the same way that some of these others did. These queens that represent the new school of drag, they pre-package their concepts and their catchphrases and their looks for what Drag Race is going to expect from them, so they're ready to get to the show, give that artistry, and then gain a short amount of fame. That's kind of what drag has become these days for so many. Satine didn't need that. She was established. She had a lot to go back to. And if going home was in her fate, she wasn't going to lose opportunities where some of these other queens might not have bookings to go back to if they got eliminated in episode 3. She clearly cared about the competition, but not in that desperate way that we sometimes see from queens on Drag Race right before they go home. This easygoing, carefree attitude allowed her to perform from such a raw and vulnerable place while harnessing her unique skill set and delivering one of the most emotional lip syncs of the season. For me, it was pretty clear that by this double save of Margarita and Satine, that the stars were aligned for Satine to ultimately break top 2 at the end of the competition. Her star power was just too great. Her selfless decision making, her impactful lip sync, as well as her trajectory up until this point. She's that kind of performer that needs to be seen more in a competition setting like this and deserved to be uplifted in a moment of stumbling, not because she's made such great strides in her career, but because she is a star, and that was undeniable. Throughout the remainder of the season, Satine dominated the challenges from Snatch Game, where so many tend to buckle. She was unafraid to act silly and not take herself seriously, bringing her inherent entertainment skills to a medium where a great many queens struggled to shine. And she just kept soaring, whether that be her hilarious performance in the musical, making gooning faces and gliding across that stage, capturing the scene among so many others who were doing their best to stand out. She dominated the group improv challenge where many of the queens this season struggled. She obliterated that roast, leaving the judges and the panel of eliminated queens in stitches. And she had an utterly stunning turnout in that makeover challenge. Not to mention that her fashion game was always peak refinement and elegance. She did all of this while maintaining solid relationships in the background with the other queens. Her positive relationship with them manifested in the way they trusted her explicitly to make the best decision for the group, by receiving heart pieces to save contestants on more than one occasion. No one else did it like Satine this season, and no one has for a long time. And to casting's credit, they sure know how to pick them. Satine's run throughout España 5 was a fantastic return to form of classic Drag Race España, where Carmen and Sharon were the clear guiding lights in their respective workrooms, bringing kindness and generosity to their cast. And that light is in direct correlation with the love that Satine has for her chosen family. Her compassion for her found sister was magical, to say the least. I could feel how much Satine revered this woman and wanted her to have the fantasy experience at Drag Race that so many dream about. With all of this in mind, it's no surprise to me that in the finale, Satine continued to stomp. Hi, hello everyone, my name is Jer, and this has been the most incredible season of Drag Race España to date, in my opinion. Traditionally, the finale is very much set up like a victory lap, in my opinion. We get to see the culmination of the body of work of each one of the queens that made it there, reflected through a music video or a performance challenge of some kind. We get a couple of stock critiques about how well they've done, the judges marking some of their high points, and then someone gets a crown. This season went above and beyond just doing a music video, which I love to see. They also did a lip sync for the crown. Typically, I dislike a top 4 lip sync for the crown because I think generally it's been unfair in the past. There have been queens that made it to top 2 who I don't think had the best track record or were not the most likable, maybe even just got their way there through a gimmick. But for this cast, I didn't mind that there was a lip sync for the crown because I genuinely wanted all 4 of them to win. There's always at least one queen that I don't care that much for. I don't want her to win, and I didn't really want to see her in the finale, but I don't want to be mean, so I say I like this top 4 because usually 3 out of 4 is fine with me. This top 4, however, is genuinely, I think, my favorite top 4 of all time. I personally could not choose who I wanted to win this whole season, and so I think leaving them to their own devices to showcase their raw skill and talent in a lip sync is the most decisive way to choose a winner. And I was so happy that they showed us every single one of the balls that were going into the hopper with the queens' names on them, so that there was zero doubt that this ball hop was fair. Every time that they have done a ball hopper, I always think, how are we to know that these balls have their names on them correctly? How are we to know that this was not rigged? Because we see the hopper there, we see the pit crew wander off to another portion of the room, and when they come back, they just so happen to draw the name of someone who very likely should be lip syncing to the song that was presented. Or we get a situation like in Slation Royale where they showed us the names and colors of those balls so brightly and they didn't move that it felt just as rigged as any other lip sync Lollapalooza. Shout out to this beautiful, stunning man for putting some strength in his crank to get those balls moving. I love a man who can get those balls bouncing. The very first lip sync is between Margarita and Nyx. meaning that La Caudilla and Satin Greco will be lip-syncing second. No matter how this shook out, I was gonna be devoed and I was going to have painful emotions because, again, I want all 4 of them to win. And I think in this first lip sync, we saw them work it out in very different ways. But I gotta ask, in the tone of RuPaul to Jasmine Masters, where did you get a mini meteorite? I don't know how much of this I can even show, but her areola slip made me think of Cynthia Kiss. We need fashion tape, Bradley. This is a fashion emergency. We need fashion tape. I was rooting hard for Nyx, but I did think it was a long shot that she was going to beat 3 seasoned professionals for the crown, despite how much I admire her. And with all of her greenness in drag, I'm not surprised that she was the first eliminated. I want to say on a positive that she was present every single episode, even in times where I think most competitors would start to get down on themselves. Once you've been in the bottom so many times and had such an up and down track record, people not believing in you and undercutting you, like she had some drama earlier in the season with Crystal, that could get to a competitor and they would stop showing up. But she was constantly mentally present and giving her best, which I respected. And it's clear by the fact that they saved her multiple times that they cared about her too. And they very clearly love and respected her presence in this competition. And as the underdog, I wanted to see her succeed. And I, for one, am really excited to see what she does with her post-drag race journey. Satine and Caudilla are next to lip sync. And I think it was very clear to me from this pairing who was going to move on to the next round. Caudilla is an entire vibe to me and has winner energy down. But her momentum in the competition just did not have the same force that Satine did. For me, she emerged as a frontrunner really early, but I think her drag and sort of IDGAF attitude did not click with the judges right away. I think it wasn't until about the halfway point that they started to see her star power, and it wasn't until the roast and then the makeover challenge where I think she presented fully as someone who could be a finalist. And when you connect with the judges that late, it's hard to win the crown. You kind of have to make an impression early. And Satine and Margarita both did that. Much like Nyx, I thought that Caudilla was extremely present this entire season. And during this finale, I think gave Satine a run for her money. But ultimately, she does lose, and if it's going to be to anyone, I'm glad that it was Satine. I feel like not winning Drag Race is easier to swallow when you go against such a power player. Caudilla's journey was peppered with this unwavering confidence, so it was kind of sad to see her lose all of that steam in those last few minutes. But much like Nyx, I cannot wait to see what she does next. For the final lip sync, we get a redemption of Margarita and Satine head to head, but not before we get the Bring Back My Girls runway. I only want to talk about a couple of standouts, and that was Escandalo, who was to me giving mermaid meets like Mirelurk King from Fallout. I was obsessed with the color pops and the way that this garment was constructed. She looked great, and it makes me sad that we did not get to see more of Escandalo this season. And I just turn up fiercely to her dragon presentation, and I continue to stan Alexandra's aesthetic. I love the proportions of that mermaid skirt in the whites and the blacks with those little sexy cutouts. Her style is so uniquely her, and I'm glad that we got to see her this season. She was a much needed presence, and she became a meme that will be brain rot forever. Satine and Margarita totally stole the show though when it came to the finale gowns. Satine's gold and jade dress was a jaw drop. And it was great juxtaposed against Margarita, who was in similar colors but in red. They were great compliments. It was very Pokemon Fire Leaf. I love the volume of both of their dresses, and the color palettes were luxe. And this final battle was electrifying. I liked the way they played with not only each other, but also emoted to the room. And I think what they both displayed well was diversity of lip sync style. They have their tricks and their gimmicks that they of course use during lip syncs to help get them through it, but these two showed that they have several other tools in their belt that they can use at any time and deliver dynamicism. The emotion was through the roof, and I kind of had no idea who was gonna take it. It could have easily gone to either one of them, and I would have loved to have seen it. Satine ultimately is the winner, which I think was completely deserved based on her body of work throughout season 5. She displayed humility, professionalism, polish, and absurdity where needed to. She had a great aesthetic branding, and she always stuck true to herself, and again, never seemed desperate for the crown. She was there to work, present her best, and boy did she do her best. And I think this was spectacular to witness from the beginning of the season to now. But before we wrap this up, I want to say again, I wanted every one of these contestants to win season 5. I think this is one of the most dynamic top 4s that we've ever had in Drag Race. Nyx being the perfect representation of the underdog. Someone whose charisma skills are so strong, knows how to present, knows how to act, is fierce in front of the camera, but struggles a little bit here and there with aesthetics. They're getting there, but they're not quite there yet. Margarita being this comedy queen who has so much more than just that to show, and has nailed down what she wants her drag to look like. And Laka Udia being sort of alternative light, new age of drag, sort of blasé, but takes her art very seriously, while also having an extremely laid-back attitude about it all. I would have been happy, again, with literally any of them winning, but one thing is for certain. Satine is mother, and mother 8. Like a woman! Thank you all so much for joining me this season. I appreciated immensely learning about cultural things that I'm not as versed on because I don't live in España. But I loved getting to experience this season as it was happening because this is my first España season that I'm watching live. This was a fantastic one to end 2025 with because we're not going to get a crowning until definitely the new year. Congratulations to this entire cast because they made incredible TV this year and made a genuinely exciting competition. And thank you all for turning up every week to listen to my thoughts and share your opinions as well. We are continuing our conversation about Drag Race España Season 3 on my weekly podcast. You can check that out here on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. So feel free to check that out and hear some of our thoughts about a classic España season. Thank you for watching and I will see y'all on the flip.